It's very interesting to me that in preparing for today's message, I had some sort of block within me that said, you are not meant to do the same kind of Easter message that preachers do and I have done over the years. There is something else. Unfortunately, the message came in parts, so the something else was not revealed until a day or two ago. But what has emerged is the tremendous, within my own heart and soul, this tremendous connection between the Easter story and the 12 Powers of Man, written by Charles Fillmore. Of course, the Easter story itself is beloved and universal. There is no more meaningful or powerful scripture that I know of. It is clearly a hero's journey of mythic proportions. Through it, we learn the greatest of all secrets, the triumph of life over death. Believers everywhere are lifted out of despair by this promise. For some, the great truth is that Jesus died for their sins, and so they are saved from their own weak and wayward selves. Others, like most of us in Unity, embrace Jesus as our teacher and a guide worthy of our emulation. We walk in Jesus' footsteps every time we face an obstacle with courage. Every time we overcome a seemingly impossible difficulty. Every time we rise from the ashes to begin again. And every time we come back from being knocked down by life stronger than ever before. Whether literal fact or myth, Jesus' journey from Palm Sunday to Easter, from triumph to tragedy to tomb and back, has affected the life of every person raised in Western culture, even those who claim to be agnostic or atheist. It is an archetypal tale with a message for all of humankind. But how we relate to it, how personal we make it, determines the extent to which we allow ourselves to be transformed by it. Today, we begin this series of messages on the 12 Powers of Man. As a way of beginning, we'll take a look at the powers in action in Jesus himself throughout his Holy Week journey. Hopefully, seeing them demonstrated in this way will make both the Easter story and our 12 Powers study more real and relevant than ever. So Unity's co-founder, Charles Fillmore, wrote the book, The 12 Powers of Man. And in it, he identified the spiritual faculties within every human being that, if developed to their full potential, would result in the manifestation of the Christ consciousness. Here are Fillmore's own words from the introduction to the book. Now, don't let the old-fashioned language put you off. This was a long time ago, because this is a truly divine idea given to Fillmore, in his words, directly from headquarters. Herein is set forth the metaphysical idea of the spiritual quickening of a man on the human plane and his transformation into the divine, not by miracle or fiat of God, but by the gradual refinement of the person of flesh into the person of spirit. Unspeakable joy, glory, and eternal life are promised to those who, with unselfish devotion, strive to develop the Son of God consciousness within himself. All the glories of the physical existence are nothing compared with the development of one's true spiritual potential. I've heard this a lot over my 30-some years in Unity. And the last couple of days, I heard it as though it were brand new. And I saw what a miraculous, powerful idea this is. And I also realized that I have never heard this idea anywhere else except in Unity. What Fillmore has done is to lay out an elegant and clear roadmap for conscious evolution. We often speak of transformation in unity. Well, this is how we do it. We learn about the amazing faculties that lie as seeds within us, and then very intentionally begin to nurture them toward their full potential. Step by step, our ability to access the power within us grows, and step by step, we become more clear and conscious, more loving, more intuitive, stronger and wiser, and more effective as light bearers in the world. So here are the 12 powers of man: faith, strength, wisdom, love, power, imagination, spiritual understanding, will, order, zeal, and life. When we become aware that these faculties all lie within us and are ignited by the idea of our unlimited potential, we step on the path of becoming truly conscious human beings. In the midst of any difficulty, we will learn to ask our higher self, which some call angels and some call spirit guides and others call the heart, which of the 12 powers is being called out in me right now? And I've noticed something. Simply asking the question causes a quickening, as Fillmore put it, a surge of conscious awareness, which introduces the possibility that our difficulty comes with a high purpose, that it could be a blessing rather than a curse. Having stepped out of our habitual cycle of reactivity, you know what that is? You know, the knee-jerk reactions? We can see things differently. No longer do we rail against discomfort or try to push it away or pray merely to endure. Gone are feelings of self-pity and victim thinking. From this new perspective, we see that our challenges are crossroads, and that within them lies infinite possibility for growth. Simply by asking, which of the 12 powers is being called out of me now, I have chosen a new path. I have acknowledged that I am much more than a struggling human. I claim my spiritual power. I discover within myself a degree of emotional strength and mental focus that will allow me to use my problems as stepping stones toward my own evolutionary journey. But often, when faced with uncertainty or difficulty, we tend to become fearful. We think there is only one right decision, and we're afraid of what will happen if we make the wrong one. We ask, what should I do? Imagine for a moment that this is the wrong question. What if the right question is, who am I to be? Not what should I do? Who am I to be? You see, our fears come from a sense of powerlessness, that we might be overcome or overwhelmed by the path we choose. It's as if we believe that one choice will lead to bliss and the other to devastation. But understanding our innate power and strength, we make our choice from a place of peace, because we know that we have all the inner resources within us that we will ever need to learn and thrive, no matter what path we take and no matter what circumstances arise. This is the most powerful of gifts in my book. When I think about Jesus' walk from Holy Thursday to Easter Sunday. I see a powerful person being challenged to the max. What he faced was so superhuman that many people call him God incarnate. Yes, but perhaps the greatest gift we can receive from the crucifixion and resurrection lies in the understanding that Jesus was human and that we, you and I, have within us the same potential he had. And that potential is the 12 powers. As we look carefully at the way Jesus handles the challenges before him, we see him calling upon each of these powers, which have, by that time, come to nearly perfect expression within him. Think about his courageous entry into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. We talked about that last week. With his powers of faith, strength, and zeal fully activated, he had the courage to ride headlong into his destiny. Knowing that his executioners were all around him, still he rode right into the middle of Jerusalem, right through the temple gates and into the temple courtyard. The following Thursday, at that sacred Last Supper where he said goodbye to his beloved disciples and spelled out a holy mission for the rest of their lives, his tremendous love and wisdom shone like beacons, illuminating for him the path of compassion. And that very same night, when agonizing fear and doubt brought him to his knees, he was able to dig deep for the power of will, to go forward, to finish the mission he had come to fulfill. What a lesson for us, that even in the midst of our darkest hour, when we are feeling extremely vulnerable, we have at our core all the strength, will, and power we need to go and do what needs to be done. And on Friday, after being betrayed by one of his beloved disciples, falsely accused, humiliated, and beaten, we see Jesus stand silent before Pilate. Through the power of spiritual understanding, he is able to remain centered in the abiding peace of one who knows who he is and knows his mission. Chaos swirls all around him, but not in him. He knows deep in his soul that everything that is occurring is unfolding in perfect order. Thinking of Jesus standing silent in the face of political authority with the ability to end his physical life, refusing to fight, refusing to defend himself, I can viscerally feel the incredible spiritual power of self-restraint and non-resistance. From Pontius Pilate to Golgotha, Jesus is executed. We call it crucified because it doesn't land in the same way as executed. But he was indeed executed for having a new idea at a new time and speaking truth so powerful that people could not listen. But even in the midst of this suffering, he finds that he has the presence of mind and heart to forgive his executioners on the spot, in the middle of what he's going through, and then turn his attention toward his mother and see to it that she is cared for after he's gone, and by handing her over to the care of his beloved friend John. And so death comes to his physical body. What an example of the power of renunciation. Total surrender of everything ego-bound and earth-bound. because this is what has to happen to make room for life greater than anything the physical world has to offer. We cling to so many things on this earth. We think our life depends on having them. But the life they bring is conditional and temporary, and our soul somehow knows that. Jesus could let go completely because he had a vision. Through the power of imagination, he had already become his triumphant, resurrected self. And finally, after 3 days in the tomb, he rises and appears to his mother and his disciples as a translucent light body, something they couldn't really understand. They are awed and amazed because they saw him die, and yet they could feel a life force in him far more powerful than had ever been there before. Truly, life had triumphed over death. The time of trial is over. Jesus is free, and Christianity is born. For the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at these 12 powers in a very, very practical way. How we can use them in our everyday life as a way of handling everyday problems. How we can learn to see differently and measure success differently. And best of all, what it might feel like to know that there are no circumstances that can defeat us. In your bulletin this morning, you'll find a list of these 12 powers. Under each of them is a short description and an affirmation. What I'd like to do right now is kind of a call and response thing. We're not going to read all of this, but as I call out the name of the power, would you respond with the affirmation that's written beneath the description? Now, you've got one more thing to do as you do this with me, and that is to pay attention to your own inner self. As you speak that affirmation, see if you can be connected enough to your own spirit and soul to feel your inner response to that statement. Because here's what we know. Affirmations are statements of truth that often belie appearances. And if you're like me, you may find that you have some place within you that wants to argue for the appearance or what is showing up in the material world. What is showing up in the material world has nothing whatsoever to do with the true potential that lies within us. So let's try this, and you see how it feels to say these affirmations. Okay, first, faith. And the affirmation is, with God, all things are possible. I trust. Strength. Through my faculty of strength, I hold fast to my faith and keep my mind centered in truth. Wisdom. Centered in God, intuitive wisdom guides me in all things. Love. I am in divine love expressing in the world. Imagination. My imagination is an unlimited wellspring of creative ideas. Understanding. I comprehend the truth and take right action. Will. Divine will moves me into action. I live the truth I know. Order. My life and all my affairs are unfolding in divine order. Zeal. I am alive with enthusiasm and the joy of living. Renunciation. The activity of spirit frees me from false and limiting beliefs, thoughts, feelings, and actions. And finally, life. Life surges through me, renewing my body, mind, and spirit. So if you're up for it, I would ask you to read that whole thing full through a couple of times, 2 or 3 times this week. And when you get to the affirmation, you say it. Be still for a second. Notice what comes up inside of you and just make a note of it on a little journal or something like that. As we do this week after week on each power, I promise you that you will be able to see the movement of your own consciousness on that paper. So there we are. The 12 powers of, I call them humankind. Charles Fillmore in the olden days called him a man, but we know what he meant. We've been given the roadmap. Jesus has shown us what's possible. The rest is up to us. Happy Easter. Namaste.